Everyone. Very warm welcome to all of you present here as well as online. And of course, especially warm welcome to Dr. Mimi Winbird, our guest today, diplomats present in the audience, scholars all around, and of course, research scholars as well. It's really a pleasure to be hosting you this morning at the Center for Policy Research.
Thank you for having
This is not the first event that we have done on Myanmar recently. We had another occasion when we had one of your companions in this visit, Zortu Singh, and a larger delegation that had come and visited Delhi a little earlier. And definitely, particularly over the turn of the year, Myanmar is very much at the center of a lot of attention, or actually should be much more than it really is.
Yes.
In the month of December itself, I think the opposition has got control of four large towns, two in Rakhine and two in Chin State. And these are in states that really border India. There's been a radical change in the territorial, administrative, and military situation in Myanmar over the last 13 months, particularly starting from the October 10/27 offensive of the Three Brotherhood Alliance. I think of particular interest to our audience would be to what extent the opposition has gained territorial, administrative, and military control, and to what extent people might feel this is reversible. There is a tendency in India to think of the current challenge to the military junta very much in terms of what happened in 1988 and 1990, that after a period, in that case, a two-year period of pro-democracy agitation, largely peaceful and on the streets, the military was able to re-establish control and, in fact, reverse the gains of democracy at that time for another several years. And there's a tendency of that hangover to continue, that somehow the junta and the efficacy of military force is so strong that the junta will somehow reassert itself. And a major fact in this case is that, according to the latest NUG figures, close to 144 townships out of 330 in Myanmar have now fallen under opposition control. These include about 95 towns and two regional military commands. The Myanmar army has never lost so much territorial and military control in the past. Estimates of the actual degree of territorial control vary, but they are certainly upwards of 50%, probably 60%, maybe even 75%. So the question, this is one major fact. A second major development, and this has relevance to the subject of our today's of the topic today, is that China has shed its sort of normally ambivalent and ambiguous position, which many people very often see as playing both sides, to come out clearly, somewhat uncharacteristically, in favor of an extremely unpopular junta. And the question is whether it's possible that China is making a misstep in this context, and whether, in fact, this offers an opportunity for diplomacy. And particularly, I think in the context of today's talk is whether this offers an opportunity for Indian diplomacy to make a move. Because quite clearly, in terms of internal properties, the aspirations of the opposition at this stage, but I would say also the aspirations of the Myanmar public, are much more in line with the traditions of democracy and federalism that India has than the tradition of one-party rule and governance that China has. So, is there a diplomatic advantage, and is India capable of making that move? I'm sure you will touch also on the international kind of geopolitics, in particular the role of the UN, ASEAN, which has had its 5-point consensus from the time before the armed revolution began, and it still remains the same. So I think these are some of the things that we see, and we also see that of late Thailand has taken an initiative to bring some of the neighboring countries of Myanmar together. including countries like Bangladesh. So far, the ASEAN formula has not had a place for neighbors who are not also members of ASEAN. And then we have a changeover in the presidency of the ASEAN coming up at the end of this year, and it moves to Malaysia, who people expect may take a more active role in diplomacy. So I think to take us through all this, I cannot sort of really compliment you, Dr. Bird, in choosing the subject of today's talk and to do it here in Delhi.
Yes.
And I'm sure that our audience will be very interested to hear you. So I invite you now.
Oh,
to
yes.
Make your statement.
First, namaste, aloha, mingalawa, and hello. Good morning. Thank you for having me, and thank you for inviting me here. And I appreciate the warm welcome, because it's a little bit cold for me because I live and work out of Hawaii, and it's a lot warmer than here today. So I appreciate the warm welcome. But before I start, I wanted, it also is on my presentation. What I am going to say today is of my own assessment as a personal assessment. I'm not representing U.S. foreign policy or any position of my center. It's on my own. So I just want to say that disclaimer. And with that, we can start a little bit. I have a presentation that I want to walk you through. It will take about half an hour, but you can stop me anytime. And of course, this is my own assessment. So I'm sure if you have different data, you may assess it differently, and that would be really interesting discussion today. So please, if you have disagreement or do you see this environment differently, I would love to hear that, because I'm a researcher as well, and I'm always looking for more data. So, and more perspective. So thank you so much for having me. Okay. I think the first part of a geopolitical situation, I think that this audience today in India is a lot more, I think, knowledgeable about the Myanmar importance of geopolitics in the Indo-Pacific region. We call it Indo-Pacific region, right? I work for a department that is, we always call it Hollywood to Bollywood, and to penguin to polar bears is the area that we looked at. Yeah. So I will always call it Indo-Pacific region. And so I'm sure this Burma is at the crossroad. And then it's the tail of Myanmar really leads to the western entrance of the Strait of Malacca, which is, as everybody knows, Strait of Malacca is about a third of the world trade goes through there. So it's very important trade route. And as well as 80% of this energy supplies for Northeast Asian countries, to include China, Korea, Japan, it goes through this Malacca Strait. And so, Burma has been very strategically important for China, because 80% of its oil goes through Malacca Strait as a way of a backdoor or strategic alternative to Malacca Strait, and they call it a Malacca dilemma. Right, it's very vulnerable for them. And then, of course, Burma is the last democracy on the mainland Southeast Asia. So again, here are some showing some of the trade route, right? Myanmar's right there. As you can see, the tail kind of lead into Malacca Strait. Myanmar has about 2,000 kilometers of the coastline. So Myanmar maritime territory is almost as big as its land territory. So it's unusual. And then Myanmar is the only country that has a direct border with China that give access to the western end of the Malacca Strait, because Thailand has, western entrance of the Malacca Strait, but it doesn't have direct border with China. Right? So Burma is the only country that has that. So that makes it unique on Burma, right? And see, I was saying, so it's interesting. Burma is seen as the backdoor to the Indian Ocean for China, landlocked provinces, but as well as historically, Burma was seen by British as a backdoor to China.
Yeah.
Way back when, right? So it has been kind of a backdoor area, yeah. Just to give it a little bit. So Burma is the only country that provide the vital strategic alternative for China's Malacca dilemma, like I was saying, because 80% of the energy supply has to go through Malacca Strait, and that makes them vulnerable. So in time of war, if someone just to choke close the Malacca Strait, and then they're stuck, right? So for example, if they want to go to war with the West on Taiwan, if they just close the Malacca Strait, then they can't continue to go. So I think the Malacca dilemma is that's actually the word Malacca dilemma is they coined it. It's not us, yeah. And another thing is rare earth minerals. And I think this is very little known facts. A lot of people don't know that Myanmar provides a large supply of the world's rare earth minerals, but they're coming through their raw material, they're mined by Chinese, and then from there they go out. So this is 2021 data, but also I think that 2023, another like 70% of rare earth minerals for China comes from Myanmar. And they said that about 50% of the world rare earth minerals supply is coming from Myanmar. And it's a Chin state. So I'm going to show you where that is. So can you see the line, the border area in Myanmar, the little, like how Myanmar like a little gecko, right? The gecko head, right? The gecko head, and where the China and Burma border right there is Banwa, and that's where the rare earth mineral mines are, right? The issue with those rare earth mineral mines, the revenue that come out of those mines goes to Naypyidaw. The people in the area, Kachin, don't share the benefit of it. What happened is they ended up with environmental degradation and pollution. A lot of the wells were poisoned by the mining process. So people are left with all the environmental degradation, but all the revenue benefit goes to the military junta in Naypyidaw. So that's, but this area has now fallen under the control of the Kachin Independence Army in a fourth quarter of last year. So that is until that point, until the Kachin controlled that area, China was putting a lot of pressure on the northern armed groups, but the Kachin used that as a leverage point. And that's when China is able to, they use that leverage point to force China to reopen some of the trading posts that they have closed, to try to put pressure on the northern armed groups to stop fighting with the military. So we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. So these are the mine areas. And another strategic importance, I think this is something that I see a lot of the Indian scholars and writing about the Coco Islands, right? Again, it is like right at the entrance of the Malacca Strait. And this is this is from the India. This is from the India author that I saw. 2006, the Coco Island, and 2020, there's the runway, right? And that China has a 99 years lease. Again, everything that they're doing, you can see how they're trying to create strategic alternative. Strategic alternative. So that's why Myanmar is vital for China in Indo-Pacific region. So many times people think it's more of a economic. They think it's more economic, but it's more than economic. Economic is secondary. I think primary, in my assessment, is this geostrategic. So this was something Booz Allen Hamilton did back in 2004. They talk about this string of pearl theories. I think people have heard that, right? And as you can see, those stars are the very important area. And look at Burma has 5 stars. No other country has that many stars. Yeah. And they have actually executed, many of those area, like the pipeline has been constructed. And that brings me to how this Burma is really vital. And back to you talking about, Ambassador, that we should be talking more about, the country and the conflict and how it's changing the dynamics of the geopolitics in the region. And I go to a lot of the security, Indo-Pacific security conferences in Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Korea, and they talk a lot about Indo-Pacific regional, security, but they would bring up Ukraine several times, but never brought up Burma. And Burma is the only country that is embroiled in open conflict in our area of, in this Indo-Pacific region. So it is becoming a blind spot, as I call it, strategic blind spot for the world, and they just don't talk about that. But it can, like I said, because of the geopolitics, geostrategic positioning of it, that it could change the calculus, the dynamic in this Indo-Pacific region, and that may have a larger impact on even like beyond the Indo-Pacific region, but nobody's talking about that. And that's why it's not surprising China is very hands-on involved in this conflict, trying to shape the, exploit the conflict, internal conflict, internal conflict. So David Steinberg, who just passed away recently, he was there when it's come to Burma scholar. He's the big name. He was like 90-something years old when he passed away. I think the September of last year, 2024. He said the Achilles heel of the U.S.-China strategy is the U.S. policy towards Myanmar. And I would like to change it. China's strategy is the blind spot, strategic blind spot towards Myanmar. US and USS, I call it. So China had a choice in this conflict, right, earlier. So I put it in this, but they really prefer authoritarian regime, right? And over, if they are really more concerned about economic growth and prosperity, they would choose more of a path for stability. And in this point in time, everybody, I don't know, maybe you disagree with me, the stability is only if the military junta is not there anymore, because military junta is the source of instability, because it has always used divide and conquer methods. They made sure everybody is fighting each other so that they can control that, right? So if you take away that, they're very much systematically trying to divide and conquer in Myanmar. So if you take that away, then people will be left to naturally work together to, overcome some of the misunderstanding and mistrust. But because the military is always flaming it, fueling it, right, that always keep everything in conflict. So if you remove that, you'll get more stability in Myanmar. But of course, a lot of people think that if military isn't there anymore, that will be it will be destabilizing. But that's their propaganda, ladies and gentlemen. That has been their propaganda. If you believe that you are going right into military's propaganda for the last 70-something years, right? Because that's how they use that propaganda to keep themselves in power. And I'll show you, there has been study done, as well as my own interview with many actors in this conflict. I will assure you that it is the military is the source. And if military isn't there, there's a better chance for stability in Myanmar. So I will show you. I hope I can make that case. So, China has been bullying, doing their bullying behavior. They've been hypocrite because they said there's three bottom line, right? The red line. The last one is prevent external interference. But meanwhile, they're in there. They're in there actively interfering with the Myanmar conflict, right? They have taken sides. And so here are some of the pressuring things that they have done. So I don't want to go through it. You can read that. And these are just, I stopped at 24 September. There are more they have done since then, right? But the interesting thing is, when I started interviewing many of these ethnic armed group that deal, everybody think, oh, they're China's puppet, right? But what I realized is they hate China more than everybody else because they get direct squeezing and bullying. But they needed China to offset, to balance the military, right? As the military loses, the control, as it's collapsed, China doesn't, it loses its influence. And the second piece is trade, right? They need, because they're landlocked provinces, they need China for trade. So now China is, in the past, they need China for two things, right? To offset the military and then for trade. Now offsetting is not there anymore. So now China influence is less. It's not as valuable to these groups as it was before. See? So. Yeah, I think China was pressuring KIA to stop its operation in the Banwa area, which is where the mines are, where the rare earth mines. But KIA took over and now they have to deal with it. So this is the conflict map that this data-driven group has collected. So this is 21, 22, and 23, and you see it's get redder and redder in conflict. And here is the 20, oh, you can have my PowerPoint. I can give you that, yeah. You don't need to take. So this is 2024 up to November. I'm waiting for the December numbers. They're a little bit 1 month lagged as they put together. So as you can see how how red that is.
What is this conflict data? We need
Anytime there's a clash on conflict, they take it as a data point and then they just keep on gathering. So they have like 26,000 incidences that they track.
Like all kinds of crime, like
No, it's a clash. Yeah, no, it's like
every splash.
No, with the military.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
military,
civilian
yeah,
versus
yeah.
military.
Yeah, military versus.
It's basically a civilian versus military conflict, not so much an ethnic conflict.
Yes.
Huh?
Source. It's written.
Source right there. Yeah. Well, there's a group behind him. He used to work for Asia Foundation. Asia Foundation in the data section, and he started working on this project as his hobby, and then he's providing, but he has a team behind him that is doing that, yeah. But his team doesn't want to be known because they're giving from inside, yeah, for the security purposes. So he's the front guy, but he has about 11 people under him that is providing data, right? Uzo?
Yeah.
Right, it's about right now.
Incidentally, Srinivas, this is quite well documented because there are several institutions, in Burmese as well as international, that are tracking both conflict data as well as all kinds of breakdowns within conflict data,
right,
including the NUG.
Right. So that's another one. So yeah, I don't take it from just one source. So here is the IISS independently tracking, right, in the conflict. So they said about 96% of the townships were embroiled in conflict. And here he also said 96, right? So but they're two different groups that is tracking. So that's how I'm cross-checking the data. And then I cross-check it against also, this is on the very far right is the NUG. And so NUG is showing where the gray is where the junta control areas, right? And then you compare with IISS where the yellow is where the junta control areas, right? So it's kind of similar in showing, yeah. The earlier data from Matthew doesn't tell us the control. It just showed the just incidences. Yeah, incidents. Whereas these two show the control. So this is monthly. So what you saw was a total year by year, right? This one is monthly. So October and December. Any given month, there's about 60 to 70% conflict, but year total is about 95, 96. So that's also tracked with, there was a survey done, and I'm not able to share, but a survey showing across the country, they conducted a survey of, did you support the, the military, and nearly 90% said they reject the military. So that goes back with this data, you cross-check, right? So it's about 90%, right? It's about 90%. So 90% of 54 million people are against the military. And this is a little bit dated, but this is back in November 2023, showing the red is where the opposition has control. And that red is also, I was really interested in November 2020 because remember 1027, October 2023 is where the Three Brotherhood taken over the northern part, Northern Shah. And why couldn't the military push their reinforcement? I wanted to know. So the data is showing me because they can't, right? All the roads, but that also tells me, and those roads are controlled by different groups. But that showed me the cooperation, between the northern groups and the rest of the group that is trying to control the roads for them. Right, that's it. So these data kind of show me as a surrogate data or an indicator showing is there cooperation happening, and it is, right? So that's what. Because a lot of people are saying that Myanmar, it will fracture, and I'm looking for these data points to show how much cooperation are they happening. Because for the first time in Myanmar history, these are fighting side by side against one common enemy. That has never happened before. In fact, some of the group used to be on the opposite side, right? So as they're fighting side by side, they're developing a lot of understanding, and they're overcoming the difficult, task of overcoming the misunderstanding and distrust, right? And that is also the side benefit of nobody coming to help them. Right, if it 2022, if like UN or US or whatever come together to help win the democracy side, then they would have win the war, but they may have lose peace. But this is forcing them to work because there's nobody else. They all know that they have to cooperate to overcome the military firepower, right? They need a cooperation power. Right. So that is creating habits of dialogue, habits of understanding, habits of overcoming misunderstanding, some of it.
Can I ask you a question? Pardon my ignorance, but these groups, which are opposition groups, can you tell us something about them? Like, what are these groups? Like, these are guerrilla units, these are political parties, or these are ethnic units? Because if they're fighting with military, where are they getting sort of like armed support to fight with the military power?
Well, right now, military weapons become their weapons. They're reusing the military too. But before that, yes, it's most of the weapons are coming from Russia and China.
That's
right?
for the
Russia
junta.
and China, right, yeah, junta Russia, and then China is mostly for the
I think
opposition.
he's asking where are the weapons for the armed opposition coming from?
Oh, yeah, majority.
This armed opposition.
Right. So as for the groups, there has been groups, there are periphery, although in the borderland area, there are different ethnic minority groups. They have been oppressed since World War II. And so they have been trying to ask for autonomy and equality, right? And they asked for it, but then military bullied them. And so therefore they have been armed struggle against the military over the years. Sometimes they will have ceasefire agreement, but then military will break it. So then they will go back into armed conflict. So those are the ethnic minority base. Right?
How many groups are there?
I'll show you some of the major ones, yeah. And then, but since the coup, in addition to the ethnic minority armed groups, now you have a pro-democracy forces that are primarily made up of NUG and the People Defense Forces, they call themselves, they're Bama. And the Bama has never really joined the military uprising in this mass before. So this is the first time in history, this level of, opposition against the military. So in military, and like everybody else, didn't quite understand the transformation that Myanmar society and community has experienced in that 10 years of freedom and liberty, freedom and transition to democracy. So I will talk a little bit more about that. Yeah. And that's why this time they're, they don't want to go back to the old ways. And in a way, military also has miscalculated by not, and one of the reasons they miscalculated is they on purpose disconnect themselves from the society, right? They become elite and they just try to isolate themselves away. So then they really don't understand what kind of changes and transformation that are happening in this in the country. Yeah. So I mean, you can tell that the tipping point has been reached from Mae Aung Hlaing's address back in August 2024. Right, and these are some of the elements that we can consider reaching the tipping point. And so they have lost a majority of the country. Earlier, you saw only the gray area they really control. And he now admitted the EAOs are cooperating against his military. In the past, some of the EAO, ethnic armed organization, some of them used to fight against each other, but now they're all on each side. But there are one or two groups, a small number of groups they still have some tension, like in Chin State, right? The Chin, and they're working through that issue right now as we speak. And then loss of major regional command headquarters when I did back in August, but now they have lost another one in Rakhine State now. Yeah, they lost to AA. These are like never happened before. These are, especially the Northern Regional Command, is one of the biggest command, most fortified, fortified command, and they lost it. They lost it, right? So, and then all forces are experiencing extreme combat fatigue. And because of, as you can see, all the roads were blocked, they couldn't get the supply up. So there are units that die from starvation. And then morale is hitting rock bottom. Another thing is, Mae Aung Hlaing military is collapsing on its own weight is because of the corruption, endemic corruption within the military. Military that corrupt cannot fight wars and win. This is something like the corruption, how does it affect the operating effectiveness is something like this. When there are people killed in action, the frontline commander don't report back to the headquarters. So let's say he had 10 killed in action, they will report 2. And then they will continue to collect 8-person salaries and pocket them. Right? And they had ghost unit that has not reported. So he ordered like one of the unit in Kachin State to go attack KIA, but that unit has not been there for 2 years. Nobody knows. So at any given moment in Naypyidaw, they don't know how many troops they have. They don't, because their frontline commander is not reporting. And they have seen like unprecedented level of defection and desertions. Yeah. And again, they're not reported fully because they're afraid they will get, so it's a culture of this corruption is every level, all the way from Mae Aung Hlaing, all the way down to the front line and everybody in between. For example, another one, jet fuel, right? They will log in, they fly 5 hours of jet fuel, but they may only fly 1. And then they sell the 4 hours worth of fuel and pocket the money. So those are the things. And everybody knows that these are, and that's why they can't, you don't have the effectiveness. And people also know that their people don't, support them, so they don't have the loyalty to their superior, and they're not willing to die. So they have lost the will to fight. So that's why. And then they because as you can see, 90% of the people are against them, so they have no way to recruit, and that's why they have to resort to kidnappings and the abduction and to force people into conscription. And those type of forces that you have are not effective fighting forces. They gave them 4 to 6 weeks of training, and they wouldn't. They're just they might as well be logs. They're bullet stopper. That's it. They can't fight.
Forced conscription.
Yeah, conscription. They will give them like 6 weeks of training, and they will put them out in the front line. And so a lot of the kills are from those groups. And they don't want to be there. Yeah. So here is some of the contributing factor for why the resistance has, gained success. Is the first is the unprecedented level of civil disobedience movement. So it's kind of like at the beginning of the coup, like 80% of the government civil servant left their jobs. So Myanmar was never able to recover that to run the government. So he couldn't consolidate his control of the government, right? So that, and then defection of security personnel, military, it's like every day, like even yesterday, I just saw some more people defecting. And on the average, they said the people that are tracking about 100, troops surrender or defect every day. About 20% of the force desertion. They desert, and it's not reported. We can't report it. But I was just interviewing some of the battalion commanders, and they were saying, this battalion commander I interviewed was back in December 2022. At that moment, battalion, is 800 people. It's a full strength. He said he was down to 150 because of all the desertion and killed in action. And that was back in 2022, right? And out of that 150, he said only half of them are combat effective. So your battalions are down to 75 people. And he said approximately about 20% is desertion, 20% of the force is deserting, and they don't have the full data on it. So in addition to, tracking of the defection comes to our side, to the, people's side, so you can count for it. But desertion, you don't know. So they just disappear. It's harder to get. And another is unprecedented level of women participation. 65% of the resistant force movement is made up of women. And they're the key, their work is the primary reason nearly 90% of the people are still supporting the resistance and revolution. And because women, why now? Because during the 10 years of democracy, women gained a lot of liberty and rights, and they don't want to go back in the patriarchal military control system. So that's why they're out there. And it's amazing. It's from the old to the young. 80-year-old women, they are doing what they can. And like in the US, a lot of the 80-year-old women, they will cook every weekend and sell their food. And then the money that they get, they will support the PDFs or the IDPs. So every generation's involved. And then, like, again, worldwide mobilization of Myanmar diaspora community. They provide funding, they provide technical support, and they provide moral support, and everything in between. Yeah, so a lot of the technology to modify the drone, right? It's all coming from the people that are educated in the West and somewhere else, helping with that modification technology. Yeah. So everybody talks about Ukraine, right, using a drone warfare, but the Burmese were the first one starting to take the commercially available drone and then modifying it to carry weapons. And, yeah. And then nearly 90% of population still support the resistant. More they bomb, more committed people are against them. right? This is the type of operation, we know that it's the center of gravity is not about firepower. It's about people's hearts and minds. And if you don't have people's hearts and minds, you can't win this type of war. Firepower is not a deciding factor. It's the people power decide this type of operation. And as you can see, 90% of the people are still supporting the resistance, right? So I think the military misunderstands, even just going back to Machiavelli, right? Machiavelli talks about use of fear, right? But he also said overuse of fear can have a backlash against the prince, right? And in this particular case, military overuse of fear. Overuse of fear. Another thing about military culture as well, they have mistaken fear for discipline. They control their troops by fear, and they think that's a discipline. But so I would, prior to the coup, I used to deal with a lot of the military personnel, and these colonels, they're so afraid to make decision. And I'd be talking to them and I'm scratching my head. They're like, how can you be this fearful and fight battles and win wars? Now I have my answer. You cannot, right? You cannot. So overuse of fear is one of the downfall as well in their military. And so unprecedented level of cooperation among the EAOs, Burma PDF and NUG. They all have one thing in common, to take the military down, and that's keeping them together. Is quite apart, but because they have the same goal, they know they have to cooperate, but that habits of cooperation, habits of dialogue is going to help them in post-conflict building of a federal democracy. See, it's kind of a upside of nobody coming to help, right? Nobody coming to help, so that they had to do the hard work of overcoming misunderstanding and distrust among each other. So now they realize, and so that's why it's really amazing when I interview, even like AA, used to say, we want Arakan, we want just Araka, but now they really understand that Arakan cannot be free if others are not free. See, they start to understand that. So that's that shift is what we're seeing a lot. And that's why when the outsider keep on saying Myanmar will fracture or fail state, that's a possibility, but I think there is also a higher chance of them coming together because of this experience, See, so that's why I wanted to show you also, U.S. Institute for Peace also conducted a study of like, would that be fracture, right? But remember, at the beginning of this coup, everybody said military is too big to fail. It cannot be. The people cannot win. And now people are winning. Now people are saying, oh, well, if military isn't there, Myanmar will break apart, right? But that's Myanmar military's their psychological warfare, their propaganda. It's their propaganda, right? So I would argue that don't buy into it. Yes.
To what extent is this coalition structured or organized? Is there any single entity that commands and controls the movement and the military operation?
Yeah.
Abe-san is from the Japanese embassy.
Yes, sir. I think we have to get away from this one thing, right? They are fighting against this centralized control. What they are utilizing is what we call it joint command, because they have everybody understand where they're going. They all have a clear goal where they're going. So whatever they can do, they're working together. It's like flying geese, right? You see the flying geese, nobody's, but they all know what direction they're going. So they kind of adjust. And then the front bird gets tired, another bird comes on and do that. It's kind of like that. So Arakan, you had the TNLA, right? Then now Arakan Army is flying in the front. And then we're waiting for, maybe next will be Mandalay, I don't know, right? But they are adjusting that way, but they are in cooperation. Like that's why I show you the road, right? That road blockage is not possible if they're not working with each other. But nobody is controlling no one. There's no chain of command. People talk about where's the chain of command? Well, I think it should be looked at as a joint command. Because for many of the ethnic armed organization, it's very difficult for them to get out of their territory. They can't project their forces. Whenever you try to project force away from your territory, you need logistical tail, right? It's so much harder. But what they're doing is they're running a baton race. The armed groups are going to give the baton over to the mainland groups, and the mainland groups will give it to somebody else, right? So they will have to have a chain reaction, but that's the joint command. They have a cooperative, they alert each other. We're about to do this, right?
Get together once in a
While, I mean,
They get together based on their, yes, right. So NUG act as many times as a facilitating a coordinating entity. But also based on each of the specific operation they're conducting. So whoever is involved in that operation will for that coordinate with each other.
thank you.
Yes. So it's hard for people. Me being an American, the federal system that we come from, it's easy for me to understand. For example, I live in Hawaii. Hawaii laws are different than Texas, right? There's something legal in Hawaii, it's not legal in Texas, right? But we have something that are common in our federal government. So kind of in that way that they are trying to develop. Yeah.
Dr. Mimi, can I just intervene a little to explain, I think, two of the points that Rahul Verma and Abe-san raised, because I think a lot of people simply don't have an adequate understanding of that. One is about what are the groups. Myanmar, all through its history, has had 17 to 20, sometimes more, insurgent movement. And even through the last many years, they have been held together by individual ceasefires, which the last government tried to convert into a nationwide ceasefire, but it didn't work. What's been happening for 70 plus years is that different ethnic armed organizations have fought the central government with very little internal coordination.
Yes.
Right? And then from time to time, when there have been military coups like in 62, but particularly in 1988 and now, there has been a larger anti-military or pro-democracy or pro-federal kind of movement that has brought in the whole population. That means including the Burma population, not just the ethnic armed organization. One of the breakthroughs that has happened during this particular struggle has been, and Abe-san, this answers your question partially, has been two things. One is that some of the ethnic armed organizations are now coordinating their action. So, for example, the Three Brotherhood Alliance is
And
three
K3C.
alliances and K3C.
Yeah.
So there are
Pichunki,
three
correct.
Brotherhood Alliances, the MNDA, which is the Kokang ethnic Chinese group at one level, the Palong, which is another kind of ethnic group close by, but co-located, and the Arakan Army, which is completely separately, in the southwest. But they are able to coordinate their offensives. And what we have seen, the change, the transformation that we have seen since October 23 to January 25 has been a result of this coordination. In addition, even though it's not entirely effective, the National Unity Government, the NUG, has a military command. Now, it is not a straight top-down military command like a single army command, but they also play a role of coordination. And all these, the resistance outside the ethnic armed organizations is in hundreds of people's defense forces. They can be village defense forces, they can be town defense forces, they can be regional defense forces, state defense. So Chin, for example, has a defense CDF,
And Chin Brotherhood.
And there is no perfect coordination between them, but as she said, they do coordinate. For all of them, even if they have problems with each other, the primary enemy is the military junta. And so they are willing to set aside their immediate problems in order to deal with the larger problem. So pardon my interference,
But
but
as
I
they're
just thought
doing that, they're developing understanding. So in the past, the Burma never believed in the federal democracy. Right now, Burma like, oh, we know what you're fighting now. We understand what you're fighting for. And so they have really developed the understanding and empathy for the plight of all the ethnic minority groups that they never had before. So now in everybody's tongue is we want federal democracy, right? But federal democracy is a very big, broad concept. So they would have to negotiate in the peace, as they bring together where they want to be common together and where they want to be separate. Right. So that even in the United States, like what we see today, federal government is a lot more centralized today than when it was founded. Right. Central was a lot weaker. Until the central is able to develop the capacity, it's better to have a distributed, more distributed. Right. So right now, in fact, de facto wise, each of the ethnic areas are controlled by ethnic groups now, because military, like, my map said, there's no more central control. So they're doing fine, right? Military is the only organization that can cause this level of destruction in the countrywide. No other ethnic armed group can create this level of instability throughout the country. See? So that's, also is the issue. Thank you so much, Ambassador, for explaining. Yeah, because I work with it all the time. So I'm thinking automatically. Yeah. So so the left side is why the coalition forces are successful. On the right side, why military is failing, right? So I said, they understand their strategy is wrong from the very beginning. They're still fighting, they're still using 1950 strategy for counterinsurgency operation. They have not adapted to the newer one. We've learned a lot over the years what you need hearts and minds, and you don't win hearts and minds of people by bombing them and burning their villages every day. So they're wrong. And then also it was a political problem. They try to solve it with military action. See, so it's from the very beginning, and they don't really understand the transformation of the operating environment in the last 10 years. And because they have isolated themselves away from the people. Yeah. And then, like I said, outdated insurgency, counterinsurgency strategy. And then, like I said earlier, corruption is just eating away at, you cannot have a military organization that if you have a corruption at all. But this is like endemic for every level, very steep. So the only way to try, really reform is you have to start from scratch, because there's corruption, it's in the culture. It's in the culture. Yeah.
SNS play a certain role in
SNS.
social networking.
Social network.
Yes, social network, like social media.
Social media.
Yeah. But that's a part of the changing operating environment, right? In the past, it was very difficult for different groups, different people to cooperate and pass on information. But now, because in the age of social media and, the widespread of ICT, information communication technology advancement, those barriers has been lowered.
And has a crackdown of the junta regime.
They try to do that, yes, but people has found a way around it. All the young people, they started using VPN, and then when they drove out, there's some other way. We're still able to talk to them. Even like the military has cut all the communication.
My experience is that the Myanmar public has become perhaps the most IT protected public in the world. They have incredibly secure communication networks.
Thank you.
And that's why their cooperation with the diaspora across the globe, right? The diaspora across the globe is a major fighting force that Myanmar cannot touch, right? And they have the money because they were chased, they were kicked out of the country. Now they're all educated and they have the money. So they're support and they have the technical know-how. So they're providing that. And that's something that Myanmar and his troops can't touch at all. Right. So, okay, all right. Then less than the 10% of the people support the junta. Like I said, they don't really understand how to win hearts and minds of the people. Yeah. So this is something I did a little bit. When I look at all the successful revolution in history, I keep on seeing the three major things that keep on appearing. It's not about firepower. What I coined it as DIP, defection, international pressure, and people support. And all of those three elements exist in Myanmar conflict right now on the side of in the favor of the people side. Right? So, and you were asking about the ethnic, these are the major ethnic organization at the beginning of the movement. So on the left side, all the direct support, the 5 of them, the indirect support, and then no support. Although UWSA, right, the first one in the red category, they don't support it, but the weapons you were asking could not have come without their support. The weapons that they need. Yeah.
And they are among the closest to China,
Yeah,
by the way.
even though they're closest to China, when I asked them, would you like to be a part of, if you have the freedom to choose, right? Would you like to be a part of China as a province? Is that absolutely not. Yeah. So now is the new map, right? Direct support all went into direct support, and even UWSA, I would say it as indirect support there. And these are just major groups. There's other little groups, you know, that I don't, but these are just the major group that you are seeing. So that's why USIP conducted a study. And they said the fragmentation and workload is unlikely. It's not saying that it's going to be, you know, there's still possibility. And we have seen one or two cases of that warlordism, but it's not widespread, given that, you know, it's a large swath of the country, right? And then underlying social cohesion is stronger than people think. And because of this, they have to depend on each other. They know they cannot defeat the military firepower without working with each other. And political norms, like I said, federal democracy. Right? Everybody on the tip of their tongue, federal democracy, federal democracy, federal democracy. And then positive shift in the intercommunal relations. And that tracks with, you know, they're doing their own independent study. And I also interview many people, and I see that my findings is, my observation is also similar to that. Oh, sorry. And then, of course, there's a Burma Act. You know, Burma Act really, a lot of people have a lot of expectation of Burma Act, but the implementation of this act has been kind of slow. Everybody has talked about that. I think the most valuable element of Burma Act is not about money. It's about recognizing ethnic armed organization. It raised their profile in international arena. So when they go sit in for negotiation for federal democracy, they will have a lot more negotiating power. I mean, they are generating their own negotiating power because a lot of the Burma resistant group has to rely on the ethnic minority EAOs to train them, equip them, help them, right? They cannot win this war without them. So they are higher. But in the international arena, Burma Act recognizes them as a, you know, a legal entity in a way, yeah. So that's, I think that goes long ways for the I think for the peace. So of course, regional security, internal conflict, even though this is an internal conflict, it is creating a lot of problem for for instability for our the Indo-Pacific region, trafficking of arms, drugs, human, right, organized crime, like the scam centers, finding home in these ungoverned spaces. So, and then also the ASEAN, right? ASEAN centrality and ASEAN credibility is being questioned because this is the third issue they cannot deal with. They couldn't deal with the South China Sea issue. They couldn't deal with the Lower Mekong issue. Now they cannot deal with the Myanmar conflict issue. So ASEAN is being looked at in a negative way. So, but again, China, I think I talked a lot about China already as to what China is doing. And then Thailand, of course, Bangladesh, and then India, those are the neighbor. Yes, we should. I think that we should look at ASEAN to help, but a lot of the country in ASEAN has no impact, right? So they don't have any, they don't have the motivation to really resolve it. And then of course, ASEAN is very much influenced by China as well. So a lot of the countries that don't want to anger China, Myanmar issue, which have no impact on them. Right, so that's why ASEAN is ineffective in a way, right? But more, the neighboring country who has a direct impact should, be, I think, able to lean in because you do get the direct impact of Myanmar conflict, right? So China has these scam centers. They even right now, the reason 1027 was allowed to happen was because the Brotherhood decided to use the clearing of these scam center as a way. And so they got the China to stop pushing the red light. They didn't give the green light. China did not give them a green light, but they did not give them red light anymore in that specific. But that is the tipping point. That 1027 really gained a huge momentum for the resistant forces. So here, China forced them, and the thing is, when they started to interview these scam center and people there, they realized junta is very much involved. Junta is involved at benefiting from these scam center, and the junta forces are the one that protecting these scam centers. And these scam center not only, it's all across the globe. The people are scammed from their wealth by these people. And then Thailand. And Thailand has played a little bit of a very a diplomatic game. Thailand has always been very strong in diplomacy. So they're still, working with the military, but still supporting the ethnic armed organization as well, because they understand, especially now that all the border areas in the hand of the ethnic armed organization, they can't not deal with them, right? So they're very smart about that. And Thailand has gained a lot of economic upside from Myanmar conflict, because a lot of the Myanmar company pulled out their asset from Myanmar and they invest in Thailand. Right, and so Thailand also get unlimited supply of cheap labor to fuel their economy. So the way Thailand has played out this environment has been beneficial to Thai interest. Bangladesh is they're so narrowly focused on Rohingya that they are unable to see the opportunities this is offering. In order for Bangladesh to solve the Rohingya issue, if they can just zoom out a little bit and widen the aperture, they may be able to solve the Rohingya issue much better. So they've been so focused on Rohingya, and then they want to do state, they only want to deal with Naypyidaw. But in fact, Naypyidaw no longer have control of that area, right? Rakhine and the AA control those areas that Rohingya must return. So working with them might be better, but I think they can't seem to adapt to the new operating environment, I think. So we'll see, now that there's a new government there, I don't know if they'll be willing to make that adaptation. And then that brings us to India, right? India, my understanding, of course, here you can tell me if it is different, right? I think in 3 categories: security, geopolitics, and economic is the main issues for India and Myanmar. But I think that the opportunity is amazing for India at this moment in time, as China make a misstep. China has put a clearly support behind the military junta, and that really angered the people, right? Military junta has less than 10% of the people support, and by supporting that, it's going to create, right now, Myanmar people are very angry, and you can see that by all the protests that they're doing all throughout the globe. It's on behalf of the people from inside. People from inside are asking the diaspora to please give, we can't do that in here. So can you be doing this? So they have been conducting all these protests against China and Chinese embassy in all these different countries, because to show that their dissatisfaction, their anger against the China supporting them. But that will, in a way, why China pays so much attention to Myanmar, but I think it always get it wrong. But China understand the elite. They don't understand the people. They don't spend time to really try to understand the people. And that's where the misstep is. And then also China's model is always about elite capture, right? But in this particular case, the elite has less than 10% of the people supporting. So for China, for the long term, will be, I think, another century, they will lose the support of people. And that's where India comes in, right? India traditionally been supportive of Myanmar democracy. It has always championed the Myanmar democracy, right? And in this particular time, the democratic pro-democracy forces are winning. So don't change your horse. Continue to bet on the same horse, right? So I call it back to the future strategy. Back to the future strategy. Stick to your traditional, strength of supporting the pro-democracy or democracy in Myanmar, because that's going to be the winning ticket. Because as the northern, China has shut down the northern trade routes. So then they're looking for some other way, right? Just like on east, Thailand has benefited from that cross-trade border, increased cross-trade border. There's also, that could be cross-trade, cross-border that could go into India. Right. And then I know India has a lot of insurgency in some of these area, but I used to do a lot of counter-insurgency, counter terrorism operation. Economic growth can really marginalize the terrorism and insurgency. It can cut the knee of the insurgents. So, here is the opportunity, market opportunity, the shifting of, the demand and market. I think that's create a lot of opportunities. So leveraging the wins that coalition forces are, gaining, then leveraging the people angers against China, and leveraging the tremendous market and demand emerging. For example, communication. Military has cut all the communication. Well, if you can provide for the communication sector, right? Could the 54 million people, 50 million people, your new customer, if you can provide. And like right now, everybody is asking for Elon Musk, Starlink, right? So if you have a company, that can offer a little bit lower price than Starlink, because Starlink initially was $250 a month for subscription, and then suddenly they increased to $400. So, it created a problem. But if you can just offer it for $200 a month, right? But you still have 50 million customers that will be willing to, so I think those are some of the opportunities, right? Again, the northern, they cut all the supply off. So, okay, people still have to eat, people still have medicine needed. So if it's come from the West, right now you have the market. So that's the economic piece. And then plus the goodwill that you will gain out of this because you supported the people desires. It will go another century, right? It is almost like is invaluable, the goodwill, which China has really swelled themselves. So for me, that's that. But if you have different ideas, different perspective, I'd be more than happy to entertain. So that's all for me. Thank you. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your question.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mimi Winbird. That was really a tour de force. I think you sort of showed us the strategic importance of Myanmar in general, but I think especially for China. I think you gave us a very vivid picture of the battlefield situation and the degree of control that is being exercised, and also some of the inner dynamics of that. And I think finally you were also able to give us a sense of the opportunities for India, both politically, economically, and in general, I would say strategically. So we have, there are one or two points. I resisted the temptation of giving too much background in the beginning, assuming that everybody has a basic background.
Yes.
But one or two questions did overlap on background issues, and I think a part of Rahul's question was about the arms. Where are the arms coming from?
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to sort of, for others who have also asked this question online, I would just like to sort of clarify one thing. That, when this revolution, I call it a revolution, and I also call it simultaneously a kind of delayed freedom movement, started, really the opposition had no weapons. In Chin State, they were fighting with flintlock rifles.
Yes, right.
They were the
Muskets,
equivalent,
yeah,
muskets. They were the equivalent of sticks and stones, if you look at what the junta had. But over a period of time, one was diaspora. Diaspora poured in money. They were able to acquire arms from here and there. But the large majority of arms, in fact, were obtained from ambushes and victories against the Myanmar junta itself. Somebody asked about whether they have heavy weapons. By and large, to the best of my knowledge, they don't have.
Now they
heavy
do
weapons,
from
but-
the military.
Right.
As they take the outposts,
Right.
all the weapons are becoming, so,
Right,
yeah.
right. But, they still don't have anti-aircraft
Right, they
weaponry. They still don't have aircraft, which the military has. And in fact, the military has generally responded because their ground forces have suffered attrition, desertion, demoralization, and defection. They have increasingly resorted to air power and artillery. And in fact, even just the other day, there was an aerial attack in Ramri, in
Yes.
Chofu, in which 50 people, mostly civilians, were killed. And I think one of the questions that your talk really throws up is what is power? Is power people power, or is power military force? And I think the Myanmar case actually very vividly juxtaposes that even when we think in terms of real politics, we think that power somehow resides in force, but that there can be a model of real politics that is based on power of the people.
Right. But I would say that if you read Sun Tzu, right? If you do strategy, you always do. Sun Tzu always talk about the highest form of strategy is winning the enemy without fighting, right? So as you can see in Myanmar context, it's about strategy. It's not about firepower that bring even just looking at history, U.S. in Vietnam War, we call it Vietnam War, Vietnamese call it American War, right? If it was the U.S. firepower was unmatched, but did not have Vietnamese people support. So the U.S. won every battle, but lost the war because of the people's support. So that's what I'm saying. And Sun Tzu would back me up and say, like, it's about strategy. It's not about firepower, right? And in this particular case, firepower is in fact backfiring, right? Making the people then lose, more. People has lost everything. They said, I have nothing more to lose. I'm fighting back, right? So
So again, to come back, very often there is a tendency to think that if there is an insurgency movement or a popular movement, it is somehow a proxy for an outside power. And I think, Rahul's question also, where is the armed opposition getting its weapon from, basically hints at the possibility of external. And again, I would say, and back Dr. Mimi's talk, to say that really 90 to 99% of this movement is indigenous, it's native. It's very natural to suspect that there is an outside power interfering with it. But in fact, outside powers are interfering more on the side of the junta than the opposition.
So they keep on saying that Myanmar will become the proxy war between US and China.
Yeah.
But I said, well, if you look at based on the weaponries that are being used in killing Myanmar people, it's more of a Russia and China, right? Because Russian weapons and Chinese weapons are killing the Myanmar people, not American weapons, right? So if you want to talk about proxy war, it would be more of Russian and China,
And
Russia and China there.
And one question that I can ask on behalf of our audience is, we did talk about China, but perhaps you could dwell 2-3 minutes on China's stakes in Myanmar, other than the strategic stakes that you already talked about.
Mhm.
Just the amount of economic investments, the kind of investments in hydroelectric power, in mining,
Mhm.
and what people in India often don't realize, 2-3 points. One is that it has these gas and oil pipelines running from Chofu to Yunnan, which are major projects. It has huge connectivity projects. It has huge real estate projects. It has huge mining interests. It has grand sort of hydroelectric plans. And, all these add up to a substantial economic interest. And one very interesting fact is that when the Chinese are putting pressure, and please bear me out on this, when the Chinese are putting pressure on the TNLA and the MNDA and the Arakan army on fighting with the junta and destabilizing, they are making agreements. I mean, the opposition is making agreements on satisfying Chinese economic interests. For example, the KIA has allowed mining in Pangwa, but that is not stopping them from continuing their resistance to the junta. So in a way, China is also accepting that so long you take care of our economic interests, well, the rest is your business. And the second area that I think you could touch on is, what is the political roadmap, if at all you can call it a roadmap, of the SAC? They are talking about, they have just done a census. They have gone into an election that they have planned in November 2025 after extending emergencies several times. And China is also backing that election. So what are China's calculation behind supporting the election?
Right. So military thinks that, they have the de facto power, but they want de jure. They want de jure power. So they think that whatever they can gain from this fake election, right? But fake election with the help of China, it would amplify and say that is a truly representative. But you can see they only controlled like 21% of the country. So they can only run whatever the election is going to be, only 21% of the people represent. So but they're expecting the China to help, and then some of the China's friend will come along, so that will give them enough de jure power with their de facto, and hopefully that's what they're trying to target. But I think that I hope that the world is a lot more smarter than that. They're trying to pull wool over their eyes, but that's the only thing left for Myanmar. There's no other thing left. He doesn't have any other. I think he's trying to prevent Assad, right? But there's a possibility that Assad type of event could occur in Myanmar. But more interesting is on the democracy side. I think they just need time to come together. Right, they have to negotiate among themselves to put together I was saying where they want to be together and where they want to be different apart, right? More yeah, different. But right now, China is making sure, right, that the three brotherhood is not cooperating with everybody. So that's the pressure. And the military is trying to break up, right? So if we can help, if international community really want to help, providing a safe space for all of them to come together. All of them, at a minimum, for India, maybe the Western coalition, right? The west of all the group west of EAOs River, providing a safe space on this side. Because on the east side, they couldn't go to the Thailand side. Thailand has hosted some meetings over there, or they provided, they don't, Thailand as in like not the government, but the people were able to, gather in Thailand, right? But that's the east of the EAOs River forces. So if you can provide that, then they can do the together. So we really need the resistance, coalition forces need a safe space to come together and talk, right? And that's a non-lethal support. I think it will go a long way, and also back to creating that goodwill, and that goodwill is invaluable. I think is.
Dr. Mimi, we have a lot of questions online, but before that, please let me take, if possible, about 2 questions because we don't have too much time. And then, yeah, please. You are.
My name is Jang Bangi. I have one question, madam. You have talked about this entire story of opposition to the military junta in Myanmar, but somehow you have not mentioned anything about, Aung San Suu Kyi and the National League for Democracy. What is their role in this entire fight for restoration of democracy in the current phase of fight for democracy? That
Thank
is
you. Good question.
one thing which I thought missing. If you could highlight that.
Yes.
Can we take 2 more questions and then deal, or maybe we'll take all 4 questions and then deal with, please, next. Please be brief. And I don't.
Right, I be brief, sir. Ma'am, I have brief questions about the CDM, judicial obedience. You see 90% people are with this movement and against the junta, right? This is one. And the second is the defection in the security personnel and the civil servants also joining the obedience. This all is there, but still they are holding on. The junta is holding on. Who is buying them? Who is playing with the strings of the puppet, right? This is question. Another one is, you talk about the China-India. Not much about India, about China. I'm concerned about India. The China is controlling the economy, as you said, over there, a chunk of it, right? But over here in India, we got a 643-kilometer border, common border. We are not taking advantage of it. This is the main question I had come to talk about, but you didn't say a word. We could do a lot over there. See, the British left 2 barriers. One is Northeast, another is Burma, and then China came in, and we can't go beyond that in the East. So we are stuck here. We're stuck here. We have to find our way, push our way through to the East, and nobody is taking care of that. Right, ma'am? India not taking advantage of the process, and China playing, and India is playing a passive role. I say passive, and China is playing aggressive role. Thank you.
Yeah, we got your point.
Yes.
Please. But maybe, she's not the right person to ask that question. It concerns India. Okay, please.
Good afternoon, Ms. Mimi. I see some contradictions happening throughout the presentation. In the middle, during the commoner's reaction, you mentioned that weapons could not come without a supply. Of course, the money is coming from China, that you said. But on the other hand, you also said that the factions who are getting weapons from China, money from China, do not want to be a part of China. Then why would China or any other giant invest in a country without expecting any return? And another thing that China is targeting only the elite. What are the grounds to believe this particular thing, that China is targeting only the elites but not the masses who are part of the protest groups.
Okay, last question, and then
Hi, my name is Saliu. I am currently an intern with CPR. Yeah, so I just wanted to ask this question. So are we taking this issue as a binary between the junta versus the PDF plus the ethnic groups? Because if we're going to that route, right, I will have to disagree with that a bit in the sense that as much as I don't trust the junta, I don't trust the ethnic groups as well. Because I believe that there are many layers here in the sense that, see, let's play the game of majority. So look at post-independence Burma, right? The Burmars were the majority and all the ethnic groups were fighting against them. Now, in a post-junta scenario, these new ethnic groups would gain a new leverage. They would become the majority in a sense, they would become the majority to the next minority. So for instance, I belong to the Naga tribe. So now if you look at the Naga regions in Myanmar, Naga self-administrative zone, right? So now this most of these areas, some are in Shan region, some are in Chin region. And if you look in the context, in the ethnic composition of Myanmar, the Nagas are the most underdeveloped. They are in the mountainous region. If you think that Chin may be the most underdeveloped, no, because they still have a representation in the Aung Suu Kyi government, that is the vice president there. So they are the most underdeveloped. They live in absolute poverty. So I'm saying in that context because if you look at the Indian Nagas, I mean, they are delusional. They are living in, I mean, better off. Yeah. So that's why I wanted to know like how this dynamics is playing out, how these binaries would work out. Yeah, thank you.
your question is in a way that the ethnic minorities would become an oppressive for the smaller minorities.
Within their
Just,
territory.
I want to add religion part. Some of the minorities happen to be Christian or Muslim. Punjabi, Bamar, mostly Buddhist.
So the religious angle. Correct. So I think we'll take these, answer these
Okay.
questions, and then we'll come to, actually, there are almost 15 questions online, and there are people waiting to ask questions there as well.
So the question of Dawn San Suu Kyi, she will always be the mother and people still love her. But the movement has gone beyond NLD and beyond Dawn San Suu Kyi. So, but people still love her in their hearts and she will always be the mother. But you know, especially because she's in jail, you know, she really can't affect anything. But people still revere her and love her, and you know, but the movement is bigger than NLD and Aung San Suu Kyi at this moment. CDM and China, India's opportunity. I mean, I think you said it correctly. I mean, and my presentation is all about, you know, there's an opportunity for India and it's up to India to seize it, right? But CDM, right now, Myanmar can't even have electricity, right? The economic is tanked. All these things are because the military has been never able to gain the control of the civil servant. So that's why they operating with the 10% of the civil servant, and then the people that they bring in, they're really not qualified. You know, a lot of the qualified people left, and they went, and they now actually many of them are working for NUG and helping NUG with it. So that's what weapons. You were talking about weapons, right? Well, because WA, right, work with China a lot, and WA itself has a lot of weapons factories. They can produce their own weapons. So there's some way coming in through WA, and the WA would. So China is not directly selling arms to ethnic group, but it's coming through the channel of WA, and that's what I'm talking.
Actually, WA have their own arms production.
Yes. Some like the Kachin also have it, and then also the PDFs, because they have a lot of defectors from the military. They also producing their own now, because the military defectors are from the, you know, the weapon
Defense
production,
industry.
defense industry. So they have been able to produce. So it's a, you know, different way of getting the weapon. Even though WA, if you, like I said, you ask them, they want to be part of China, you know, they want to be a state of China, and they say no. So that goes a long way.
Can I just add one more thing here? Now, the military battle is poised at a very interesting stage, with Arakan army now virtually capturing the whole of Rakhine, They are increasingly looking outside Rakhine. So they've already started an offensive in Aiwadi. And the next place they're likely to go to is Magwe region. Magwe region literally hosts about 15 of their major ordnance and defense factories. So if they were to actually get control of that, they would really have the major part of Myanmar's defense industries tomorrow in their hands. That's how it is working.
And that's why the lethal support is not needed from the international, because they, if the firepower was the deciding factor for victory, the military will not be in this position right now. You know what I mean?
Right. So in the meantime, what I could tell you is some of the questions that others have asked, and we could just prepare ourselves for that. So one question was whether, can it be said that China is working to end democracy in Myanmar? Then there was a question on how the resistance is financing itself. We have answered that. There was questions on rare earths and mining. I think you've already dealt with that. But if they can't hear us, there is no point in my talking about this. So I think in the meantime, we still have some more time for questions from the audience here. Namita.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This was a really fascinating talk. And I want to sort of take you away from Myanmar, actually, because I think that a lot of what you said is applicable to many other parts of the world, both in terms of what you talked about, the polarization strategies being used by the junta, the weaponization of differences between people. And I think it was really inspiring what you said, that despite so many years of military repression, there is so much popular resistance that is building up against the junta. Do you believe that do you see a successful future for the popular resistance? You do?
Yes.
In the future.
They've done something that is impossible. People said can't be done, right? At the beginning, they said military will win because they have far more firepower. People would have muskets, right?
Yeah.
That's how they start. And now military control is down to 21%, right? So they have done something that is impossible. People said that is impossible.
And I really like what you said about strategy, about towards, because it was interesting that India has been pro-democracy in Myanmar, but in Bangladesh, for example, it was not supporting the resistance against the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. And so, I was just how do you see India's stance changing with respect to Myanmar right now? The voice is echoing. I think this mic is.
Again, a question not quite fair to ask her.
No, true. No, I meant in terms of how Myanmar is seeing the change in India's stance,
That's a good.
Well, the one concern is that because of the China factor, right? And India may feel like, oh, we have to engage and we got to take the side of the junta because of, to pull the junta away from them. But I think that junta is it's a it's a losing horse, right? And suddenly you're on the winning horse side. And then because of not understanding the environment or whatever, for many reasons within India, a policymaker apparatus, that they may switch and lose all that opportunity,
But why would India do that? That doesn't seem like a smart strategy to.
I don't know. I'm just saying it's a risk. I'm not saying that India is doing it. I can't tell that, but
Namita, there's a lot of questions waiting online. Can I just, because we have about 15 questions online and one person who's raising a hand, Mr. Sanjoy Hazarika, who's a very well-known scholar of the northeast of India, and of course, much more than that, a senior journalist. He would like to ask a question, but before Sanjoy, you ask the question, and I'm sorry for the interruption in between. Just want to cover some of the questions that were already asked online, and just to convey to many of you that some of those questions have been answered in the course of the talk. One was, how has the resistance sustained itself financially? I think that's been well covered. Rare minerals and China's interests, I think that too has been well covered. One question that I think you did answer, but perhaps a little not so, it may not have been in the same words, whether the NUG understand and is prepared to give equal status to ethnic groups and forego Burma chauvinism. And I think that was answered in her way of saying that, we are learning how to collaborate and cooperate, and suddenly the shoe is on the other foot. The Burma majority is suffering the same things that the ethnic minorities have suffered over 70 years. And so therefore there's greater fraternity and understanding with each other.
But also, Myanmar chauvinism is forced upon the minority because they have the military. They will say, okay, we want this in your territory, and the people in the territory say, no, this is ours. Oh, no, boom, they take it, right? So without the military, you can have chauvinism, but you cannot exercise it no longer because the military is gone, right?
Question on
That's the power
territorial,
behind the chauvinism.
a question on territorial disputes between ethnic groups. I think that has also been answered. US role, I think she talked about the Burma Act and so on. So I think that's also involved. One question here, which is about
The Burma Act too, can I
yeah,
clarify?
please.
Burma Act was brought upon by Burmese diaspora, or no, Myanmar diaspora, a lot of Chin actually, lobby it, and they put it together. So, but it's to help the people from inside, right? So Burma Act is representation of what people want from Myanmar. It's not the US imposition in the US system, right? Burma was only possible because people lobby for it. The Myanmar diaspora that live in the US, so it's a represent their desires.
So I'll take the question from Arnaz. I'll take the question from Sanjay before I get to the other questions. Or has he left? Maybe he got
12
impatient.
people left.
Right. Oh, okay. Okay, so, and in case others are there, there's a very interesting question on the role of China's private military companies entering Myanmar, particularly in the context of the joint security company that Myanmar has recently, China has recently formed with the SAC. Another question is in a
It's very concerning.
Yeah.
It's a very concerning. It's the, it could be the nose in the.
Perhaps you could elaborate
yeah.
a little on this,
Yeah.
on the GSC.
It's a law actually not to have a boots on the ground from the foreign militaries. And in China, even though they call it companies, but they're all controlled by PRC, is a PLA, PRC control. These are state-sponsored companies, private companies. So really it's, and they're all made up of, all the former military retirees. So again, it's just a proxies. Yeah. So I think that's very, very concerning. And Myanmar military is actually breaking their own law against it.
Right.
It's not supposed to have that. And it could be the toehold, people may call me a conspiracy theorist, but I believe China one day wants to have a carrier group in Jiaopu port.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Logical. Once you have such large
Toehold, yeah.
economic interests, you would like to secure them. I mean, it's logical.
Right.
A few
And
more
back
questions.
to the also Malacca dilemma, right? They want, they want to have the west end control and the eastern end control with the South China Sea Islands, right? Now you control the entrance to the Malacca Strait, the west side through Myanmar and the east side with the South China Sea Island. Voila, game over. Checkmate.
Can we take just a quick few more questions that are here?
Sure.
So one is, in a post-democracy transition, would the ruling junta be convicted, prosecuted, punishment, basically accountability in a post-junta future? Will China face the same challenges that other great powers have faced in their interference, let's say in Afghanistan for the former Soviet Union, or the United States also in Afghanistan? Could it face similar challenges if it tries to interfere too much or get into too much in Myanmar?
I think they're already facing the backlash. The people absolutely are angry. And it takes a lot for the NUG and all the ethnic groups. Don't do anything, don't do anything against it, because they just don't want to expand the conflicts. But people are already very angry, and in the future, they boycotting Chinese made stuff, right?
What about post conflict accountability?
Post-conflict Well, I think it'll be hard to, they're indirectly involved, right? They're providing the armaments that is killing the people, but the actual decision to kill them is, Myanmar and his troops. So I think that's much more realistic to be able to go after them. And already ICC is already,
Right.
started the process.
On the Rakhine, on the Rohingya
Okay,
issue.
right, but I think they added more lately. They added not Rakhine and, since the coup, all the destruction and killing that they have done to the civilian
So there's
population.
another question on, is there a possibility of UN-sponsored elections?
I don't think so, because it's not going to be, one, if they don't release the oppositions that are in jail, right? And then second is they don't have the territorial control for this election to be representation of the people desire. They only have 21% the most, and it's going to even get smaller as we speak every day, right? As they're marching toward the EAOs in Magui, so they will have less control.
Returning to that question on what, the Chinese political roadmap could be, there is a question here that is, again, very interesting. The possibility that China may end up playing the role of bringing all the groups together and gain influence as they have contacts with many of these groups. Do you see such a possibility?
I don't think China can be a real trusted facilitator because people don't trust it. People don't trust them. They have taken sides. And so that's where India can also play, Thailand can play, but not China at this moment. And people won't trust anything that China sponsored a meeting, that people won't trust it. People are very angry. So again, they swell themselves with the people by doing what they have done.
I've exhausted the questions from the audience online. So if there is any burning question that anyone has,
Yes, sir.
Sabia, he heads a think tank in Shillong.
The junta supporting any of the RSO ARSA group in Bangladesh side, Islamic, just as a mark of desperation because of the Arkanami.
They are
I think you know the answer.
yeah.
But
They
I
are
wasn't-
even evidencing that even going back to 2017, they are kind of cooperating. Military set it all up to trap Aung San Suu Kyi. Because Aung San Suu Kyi power came from people's support and international support. So they want to take one leg out from her. So they did that. And so there has been some talk of it. I'm not sure if some of the military people are starting to say that even back in 2017, there was a setup with our side.
You talked about DIP framework.
Yes.
How strong it is in Myanmar? We just saw the same thing in Syria.
DIP, the
Yes.
defection,
Yeah.
international pressure, and people support. People support and the defection is very strong. Defection is at the lower level that we haven't seen at the bigger level. The bigger level actually being captured. A lot of the general officer has been killed and captured by the resistant forces. They're not defecting per se. But you can do defection in both ways. You can get the higher level, or you just take away all their I call it trigger pullers. You take away all your trigger pullers, and the weapon don't just get up and shoot. So that's what's happening with the defection. International pressure. I think that if we get more in this particular case, India can play a role in galvanizing the international pressure. And so this, again, there's a non-lethal support. Because military is like a zombie right now. The junta is a zombie. It's never going to be a human again, right? So, but as somebody support, zombies kind of walking around and creating more chaos with it. But if you can take the zombie out, then we have a chance to start the development of a federal democracy in your doorstep.
So far, most of the defections we have seen have been at a kind of slightly lower level, colonel and below.
Yes.
But do you see, our close observers of the Tamado, or now called by another name, do you see any possibility of a split or in the military itself, in the military command itself at higher levels?
We're not
Are there any
seeing-
signs?
We're not seeing the split per se, but we have intel to tell us that all of the like regional commanders, they said if they come to the doorstep, they're gonna surrender. So military is preventing people from carrying anything white. They cannot wear white briefs, they cannot wear white t-shirt, they cannot have anything white. So what they're doing is they're finding plastic bags that is white from the trash and they're waving them. Because, you know, if you have to go down to that methods, you're at the end. You're at the end with the military.
So a recurring question, and maybe we'll end with that, is if things are so bad, how are they still actually managing to hold on to power?
I think that the organizational inertia a little bit, right? And then they're utilizing the international system. Because as long as they hold on to NAPIDO, everybody else, if you can have the entire country under the control, but if you have NAPIDO, you're like de facto, and the international system, you know, supports it. And then they're using the international system to impede on the leaders of NUG to, you know, operate and move around, right? Because they don't have travel documents. They didn't issue them travel documents, so they can't, NUG can't even convene physically together because many of them don't have travel documents, right? So military has utilized the international system to impede on maneuverability of, you know, the NUG. So NUG having to overcome all that. And, you know, NUG has a lot of weaknesses, but their ability to lead the, you know, to this level is amazing, given all the problem, all the challenges that they have to face. And they can't even meet with each other in person. And all, same thing, all the ethnic group, they cannot meet in one place, right? And but people keep on asking like, oh, where's the federal democracy, you know, framework and all that, right? Well, if they do it, it will only be a subset. You
So-
need a place for them to come together as an entire group,
So
all of them. so
Given
they can
that
discuss.
the opposition has control of so much territory,
Mhm.
why can't the NUG set up a headquarter inside the country?
I think that's 2025. I think that's where they're going in 2025. So the president, acting president Dua Lashila, oh, by the way, is not a Burma. He is a Kachin, ethnic minority group. He has been calling for everybody to come back, and then that we need to do that. So I think we can see that as another development in 2025. Yeah.
So if there was a wish list of, if there was a wish list from Myanmar of how India can sort of strategically use this opportunity to help the people, what would it be?
Like I said, the safe space, right? Safe space for people to come together,
Mhm.
and then opening the, you know, the trade actually, and then a trade. I mean, not a humanitarian corridor is very helpful, but it's more sustaining is have trade, robust trade.
Just
You know,
supplies.
yeah,
Civil supply.
like I'm just saying, like sell them the communication equipment. They're willing to buy, but it just, they can't buy anywhere, right? So your communication sector, for example, telecommunication sector can make a lot of money right now if you're able to offer it cross-border, that type of stuff, right?
Okay, I think we have to oh, you have a question? All right. Observation, yeah.
The mic, yeah.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, we have seen a lot of discussion and presentation about China's involvement and including rare earth. China's intervention in Myanmar is met with the people's anger. Now, India can do many good things differently. The Myanmar resistance movement, which is winning, is waiting for India. What India can do, for example, the KIA will even stop the border, right? Because they want to block rare earth export to China. KIA has been trying this many decades ago to do things through India.
Western, yeah.
No, this rare earth can be exported
From the back,
anywhere
yeah.
through India. That's one thing. Then
And it's business, it's not geopolitics,
business.
you know, because everybody needs rare earth mineral,
Yeah.
right?
China is not a democracy. one-party dictatorship. They never allow any neighboring states to become democracy and federal. India is a democracy. India is a federal. We used to be together under British period, and there are a lot we commonly share. This time around, all resistance forces in the western side of Irrawaddy River are looking at India. What India can do that will be mutual benefit, win-win. This is the time India to, I would not say intervene, but support, take ownership and credit. That will result for the kind of mutual benefit for the long run.
Okay, we have a belated question. Sanjoy Hazarika, about whom I spoke, seems to have, maybe he's come back, but he's asked me 3 questions that I can pose. I'm sure this is, in other people's minds as well. So one is, on what basis are you saying that the junta controls only 21% or whatever, 20-something% of Myanmar territory? According to him, the Irrawaddy Valley, where the majority of the population lives, remains largely in their hands, and there is no threat to the capital or Yangon. 1. Second, he visited Chin area a few months ago. One of the major issues for both sides remains drugs and arms smuggling. Apart from CDF ethnic control of these areas, this is a key question for Delhi, in other words, arms and drug smuggling. Now that the Arakan army has control of a lot of Chin towns and Indian assets, this question is incomplete. And I think, basically, if you can answer these 2 questions, one is, when you answered also on the question of Naypyidaw, what remains unsaid is, okay, Mandalay is also still with them. Yangon is also still with them. The most populous towns are still with them. So his question about, how do you determine this control of territory, I think remains. And then I think an issue of concern to India that he has flagged is this issue of drugs and arms smuggling. And he had a 3rd question on Aung San Suu Kyi, but I think that's answered earlier.
On the data is based on the 2 various organizations that are really tracking data. So data is the data, so I don't know what else to say. They do have a control of the large population center, is because the PDFs and the NUG, they don't want to cause a lot of destruction. So in a way, military is able to utilize their desire not to create a lot of death and destruction on the urban population, because there's a lot of people. But you see them, going after the very, very targeted situation where they would taking out some of the outposts, within the city. So you can see that. And what else?
Drugs and smuggling.
Oh, drug smuggling. The drug smuggling is not possible without the military support, because the drugs are coming from the Shan state in the east. To go across the country to do the west has been always military has to facilitate it. And you see that when they seize the drug lord, the apartment in Bangkok, they saw a lot of the information relating to Mae Online's family himself. So it goes all the way up to Mae Online. Indeed, so Mae Online military is no longer a professional military. It's a gang. It's a criminal gang, armed criminal gang. And they behave and they operate just like armed criminal gang. So, if you were thinking, that's why you cannot call them Demiro. Demiro has a very honorific, it's a very honor. So that's why in Mae Online is not a general, because I take offense to that. I was a professional soldier, and what he is doing and what his troops are doing are not the behavior of a professional soldier. So he does not deserve the rank. So it's not a senior general Mae Online, he just Mae Online. And the military is a junta. It's not a Demado.
Thank you very much. Now, we have far exceeded our time, which is probably a sign that your talk has been very, very stimulating. I just want to wrap it up with an answer to one question that was directed to me, and I think some of the questions also were in that direction, which is whether India has the diplomatic and other heft to be able to help in the kind of diplomatic initiative that you talked about. And I think this is a very important question, because I think a lot of people in India somehow don't believe that we have that capacity. But I believe that, India's two strongest calling cards are federalism and democracy. And even if it's possible that not all of Myanmar may actually want to go the democratic way, maybe some of it may want to go the single party way, overall they want to go for a much larger dose of federalism and decentralization. In fact, a totally new experiment, I would say, in federalism that could even go towards confederalism. But also that in terms of diversity, plurality, and democracy, there is no equivalent example of India in the rest of Asia. So in fact, Myanmar is in a way championing a very Asian model of a federal democratic union. And you were right, I think, to accentuate that even though each of these ethnic armed organizations and the Burma are fighting their separate wars, they still have an idea of a union of Burma,
common idea.
a common idea. They don't want to all become 20, 30, 40 independent states, but they're obviously still groping for the formula between center and state powers.
And that has to be negotiated.
And that has to be negotiated.
And to many of them, almost all of them, and none of them are asking to be a separate sovereign country. Because especially for those that are in the landlocked area, for countries to develop, you need access to the sea, right? Sea lane of, trade. So they understand. And that's why, for example, the Arakan, army, the head has started to say, we cannot be really free unless everybody is free. So that's a federal democracy.
So if we really utilize the strength of our democracy, the strength of our economy, which is another huge sort of gravitational pull that we can exercise, including the point that you made. And I think we have the diplomatic bench strength in India. We have several, retired ambassadors who know the country very well and who are capable of playing that role. But somehow what I have not seen is the conviction in our security establishment that we can play that role. And instead, we have seen a kind of dependence that, the military is the best guarantee of keeping Myanmar together. And I think this is changing. I think one thing that we forgot to mention was that in November this year, India took a little bit of an initiative in inviting both the Junta and Junta aligned groups, as well as a number of the opposition, including armed opposition groups, to India for very discreet meetings, which they tried to keep down, but in any case had gone out. And I think by doing that, India has positioned itself in a manner that maybe in future it can play that role. And this has been a juxtaposition vis-a-vis China. China coming out to support the junta almost openly, and India positioning itself a little away from the junta and towards, or not even away from the junta, willing to talk to the junta, but also making an overture to the opposition.
Yeah.
Now the question is, what is its roadmap, whether it believes in itself, whether it has the conviction to convert this into a diplomatic initiative. And this is where I think groups like the ASEAN and the individual players who are playing could strengthen and also make sure that India's intervention is not necessarily in favor of what the people of Myanmar don't want, but what the people of Myanmar want. So thank you very much, Dr. Mimi.
Thank you so much
for joining us. I would like to thank
all the questions.
the president of the CPR, Dr. Srinivas Chokula, who was here, but just had to leave for some other reason. Srinivas, Rahul, Namita, and all our colleagues, and especially the communications team and our research faculty that
And
has
then I'd like
made
to
this
thank
possible.
Zotu Song and Kemal Nguyen, who has support, because all this stuff I
Correct.
do, it's not a
Right.
single person.
Right.
I have a team.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. And please remember, we have a couple of other events coming up. On the 16th, we have an event around Nepal. And in the 20th, at the IIC, we have an event around Syria and the ramifications of Syria.
Yeah.
So please feel invited to all of them. And I hope, Vladimir, you can join us for those events as well. Thank you.